Hello and welcome to the third and the Don Football Show. I am Joe. With me is Cecil, as always. Here to talk about some NFL football. We are on NFL Conference Championship Week. We're going to recap the divisional round and then make our picks for this week. First of all, Cecil, how are you doing?
I'm on the moon. It was a great Sunday. I got all my picks right. So that was, it was a great weekend for me. So very happy with the Bengals result, as is shown by my Bengals gear here today. And I'm excited to talk about championship weekend.
Oh, absolutely. Cecil, I say your stuff. I got my They Gotta Play Us shirt on. Ready to go for this AFC Championship game on Sunday. It was a blast watching it in downtown Cincinnati. Highly recommend if your NFL team is in the playoffs to go enjoy maybe some victories with fans in the city of your choice. Cecil, let's get started with our recap of this week. We'll start with the Kansas City Chiefs and Jacksonville Jaguars. The Chiefs win 27-20. The Jaguars went down a little bit early and then tried to come back. Weren't able to do it. Trevor Lawrence looked a little bit off in this game. But the big story here is that Patrick Mahomes has a high ankle sprain. He left the game. He was out of the game for a little bit, went back. They taped it up. They brought him back in the second half. He wasn't able to do all the plays he usually does out of structure. He's more of a pocket passer type of player, and he showed he was still pretty good, but you do have some concerns after they scored 17 first half points, and then they only scored 10 second half points, and the Jaguars were coming back. So there are some concerns there with Patrick Mahomes not being able to get out of the pocket, and also it was his plant leg that was the one that was sprained, so that makes it very, very tough for the Chiefs. But the important thing was they got the win, they got the lead early, and Chad Henne did look good when he had to step in for Patrick Mahomes as well. So they got to the AFC Championship game. We'll get to more of the implications of what Patrick Mahomes' sprained ankle might be. We'll make our pick here in a little bit, Cease. But more importantly than anything else, they get the win.
Yeah, and they do get the win. Big talking point there is yes, Chad Henne did look good in relief. That was a huge, I believe 98-yard drive. He took them on to really keep the momentum in the Chiefs' favor and really gets back, good favor with everyone. Because we saw Pat Mahomes didn't want to go out, but at a certain point, he's got to go out. It clearly was a bad injury. Him just going, I'm fine, tape it up, isn't probably the best idea, especially, because it's not just this game. This isn't the Super Bowl. This is the divisional round. You still got two more games you got to play. The last thing you want to do is force yourself to be, your ankle is just completely destroyed then because you played on this injury. So it was smart to hold him out, let him evaluate it, and then let them go in the locker room and do, exactly whatever it caused to make it not feel as bad. Because let's be honest, there's only so much you can do for a high ankle sprain. And there have been guys that played with that injury plenty of times. It's not really the day of as much that hurts; it's the day after when you wake up and the swelling and all those things start to kick in. That's where you really start to feel it. So obviously, we'll get to that injury more in the preview for the Bengals Chiefs here later. But the Chiefs hold on. The Jaguars just they had a golden opportunity to really upset the Chiefs here. Matt Mahomes is hobbled. He's out for a little bit, and they just don't do anything on defense. They let Chad Henne drive down the field. Pat Mahomes is still able to create plays despite having a bum leg. And just the Jaguars' offense couldn't capitalize on anything either when, let's be honest, the Chiefs' defense is pretty bad at times. So golden opportunity wasted by the Jaguars, who, were a hot pick to maybe pull off the upset kind of closer to game time. And then they just couldn't execute when they had the chance to really to beat them while they were down. So Chiefs advance. They make it to their fifth championship weekend game, and it'll be a good one this weekend.
I think we will be as well, Cease. I think we found out that Trevor Lawrence is a very good quarterback this season, but he still has a little bit to go. He had that rough first half against the Chargers. This game, I think he could have done a little bit more. It wasn't totally his fault. The defense could have played better, as you mentioned. So the Jaguars have that good future headed, coming to them. We'll see if they can do something better next year. And Chiefs hosting the AFC Championship game. The NFC Divisional Round game that was on Saturday sees the Eagles beat the Giants 38-7. If there was one team who benefited from having a first round bye more than any I can remember in recent memory, it is the Eagles. They had so many guys banged up, including Jalen Hurts with that shoulder injury. Didn't think he was 100% at the end of the year. So he gets a little bit healthier. He looked pretty good in this game. I didn't really have to do too much at the end of it, though, because the Eagles blew out the Giants, and Lane Johnson was able to play in this game as well for the Eagles. But for me, Cease, this was more of the Eagles really having a really good GM in Howie Roseman, who has put together a really good team, and that is what really put this team on the map. And then for the Giants, Brian Dable coming in and essentially getting the most you can out of this talent was amazing, but at a certain point, that's going to end when you run into teams that are built like the Eagles are.
Right. And I mean, this really came down to, we talk about a lot in college football is, you can coach a team really well, but at a certain point, you have to have a certain threshold of talent to be able to compete at a very high level against a top program. So, a lot of this loss, I'm not going to blame Brian Dable really at all. Because, I mean, I don't know any coach given that roster could have done half the things he did this year, much less beat the Eagles team that was playing at that high level into this game, in Philly of all things as well. This is more just the true final kind of test of Dave Gettleman's GM roster, who really put this thing all together before this year. I mean, most of the guys on this roster are his. Most of the, guys sitting on the bench, not, playing and, making their money because they can't cut them are all because of the Gettleman, Judge coaching staff. So we'll see how Brian Dable does and how the new GM does as we get more talent, more drafts, more free agency that is their guys and their system. But like I said, the Giants, you can't really go away from this saying, man, our team sucks. You got to go. I mean, we have a bright future ahead of us. We found the guy coach. What do we do at quarterback with Daniel Jones? I mean, you're going to give it a little more time, try to build around him as long as he's not asking to be a, top 5 guy paid in the NFL, because that's just not going to happen. That's when you go away from that table. But if you can get away with paying him, I'd say $35 million, 40 if you absolutely have to over, 3 years. I don't think that's a bad contract, and that's something you can win with. Going to be an albatross that's going to weigh you down at times, like Kirk Cousins' contract did at points for Minnesota and has to this point. So, yeah, the Eagles, though, they're rolling. The rest really helped them clearly. They're beat up on a Giants team they beat up on, once already. And then, it's a backups game, in the last week of the season. So good for the Eagles. They advance. They're looking really good right now. And we'll see how that train keeps rolling here.
Absolutely, Cease. And you mentioned Daniel Jones. I think, 30-something million might be in the range of what they're willing to pay him. But if you don't get Daniel Jones back, it gets you into the spot that I don't think many people who criticize NFL quarterbacks really want to think about. But, what's the alternative there? You're probably going to go try to find a guy who's going to do what Daniel Jones did this season. And he was probably a top 15 quarterback this year. I mean, at the end of the day, he's right there on the fringe of top 15. And those guys don't grow on trees. We have plenty of teams right now, like the Jets, who are looking for a quarterback and are maybe a quarterback away, and they would love to have Daniel Jones. So it's always nice. We can criticize these quarterbacks all we want, but at the end of the day, and we'll get to it probably with another quarterback here later on when we talk about some of the quarterback criticism. What's the alternative? It's just there's just not many. If you want guys who can really influence games, there's 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the league that can really carry their teams to victory. Maybe 5 or 6 if you're being generous, and not everyone's going to have those guys. So I'm with you. They can go get him back on those on a $30-40 million deal, maybe short term, just so they could have a chance to find someone else. But at the end of the day, Giants, Brian Dable got the most out of them. Eagles moving on to the NFC Championship, and just again their roster really really well built. And that they deserve to be in this spot. Move on to Sunday, Cease. We were watching this one together. The Cincinnati Bengals beat the Buffalo Bills 27-10. Honestly, it could have been worse. There was a couple calls that were maybe overturned that we weren't necessarily thrilled about. But this game from the start, the Bengals kept their foot on the gas. It was snowing in Buffalo, and I really appreciated the offensive line. There was 3 backup offensive linemen playing in this game. Gave up just 1 sack. Joe Mixon had over 100 yards rushing. Joe Burrow was able to kind of scramble around, find Jamar Chase on a touchdown. And at that point, the defense just stepped up. Lou Anarumo, who has not been interviewed once for a head coaching job, which is just surprising, he really shut down Josh Allen and this Bills offense. The Bengals had a perfect game plan defensively, offensively. I give a lot of credit to Joe Burrow, like I said, just making those plays. Um, and the Bills, this was like kind of like their year. Remember when this all started out? It was Bills killed the Rams in the opening game. We're thinking, oh my God, who's going to beat the Bills this year? And then things go on, and Josh Allen gets injured. He's never the same. He keeps on turning over the ball, and we get to the point where the Bills have a very talented team, but they looked out of place on the divisional round, and that's not something I thought we'd be talking about, Cease.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things about the Bills this season that are interesting. One, they kind of became the anointed ones through the preseason to be, Super Bowl favorites. I think there was just this narrative of, it was a really great, once in a lifetime kind of playoff game between him and Mahomes in the divisional round last year. And then the Chiefs got worse because they lost Tyreek Hill, which turned out not to be completely true by any means. So I think everyone was looking for who's the best team in the AFC then. If the Chiefs be the Chiefs, nobody wanted to pick the Bengals because of the flukiness they felt of their success. So the Bills became that team, and it just kind of kept snowballing. They looked great early in the season. They did look unstoppable, but then, I mean, just systematically, you look at the Bills team through the year. I mean, they never really tried to establish much of a run game. Um, Josh Allen would just go ham at all times and just really game, on long third downs. I mean, they just expected Josh Allen to keep making it happen, keep converting, keep advancing the ball because he's the best quarterback in the NFL in their eyes. And it didn't work. I mean, Josh Allen, we talked about it last week, and we've seen it throughout the last half of the season. And obviously, he hurt his arm a little bit, so that's probably somewhat of a factor. But I mean, he forces a lot of throws downfield. He doesn't check it down very often. He doesn't try to take what the defense gives him and methodically drive downfield. It can be 3rd and 4 instead of trying to convert, 5 or 6 yard play. He's throwing a 20-yard bomb, and those aren't the highest percentage throws. Everyone knows that. It's great. There are awesome highlights when they happen, and everyone looks great. But the reality is, I mean, you can't keep betting on the long shot every time expecting it to hit. Sometimes you got to find kind of that intermediate or, one that's more of your surefire that's going to win instead of always hoping that you're going to get this big payout because it's not always going to happen. And if you're expecting that in the playoffs every time, that's where things get a lot tougher. So I think the Bills got caught by that. The other thing that really surprised me about the Bills' performance in this game was just how little adjustment the defense of the Bills did. I could see how, early on they were trying to play kind of a zone look, rush forward, try to simulate pressure with them against a very, maligned offensive line with a bunch of backups in, 3 starters out. We all heard the narrative going into the game. We were worried about it both going into the game, on our podcast last week, and it was concerning. That line did hold up. I think part of that was the snow. The pass rushers weren't able to get off and use their speed as much against a line that honestly was built for power at that point with the backups. And I mean, McDermott did nothing. I mean, that's just the reality. Their defense, I mean, nothing happened. They just kept letting Cincinnati basically take 5, 6 plays, whether it's a run or a short pass. They just kept playing so deep and soft. And next thing you know, there's an open play in the middle of the field for 20 yards. And it was a mess. It just seemed like the Bills just had no answers for what the Bengals were trying to do. On the flip side, I mean, it was an excellent game by the entire Bengals. Offense, defense, special teams did a good job not making any mistakes. And I mean, both sides of the ball. The defense, Lou Anarumo hasn't gotten a head coaching, interview, which is crazy. I think a lot of it just has to do with everybody wants an offensive coach, not a defensive coach, because of where you see these offensive teams have really gone over the last couple of years. And I mean, Zach Taylor, Callahan just put together a great offensive game plan. I mean, they got shortstop, short 3-step drops, got the ball out of their hand of Joe Burrow, got Jamar Chase in space a lot of times, whether it was, on a pass play or, something in the backfield or something, right in the flat there. They did a great job of that. They did a great job of mixing in the run and going, we're going to win. We're going to live and die by the run game in this game. It has to be there. We have to be able to get those bigger run plays. We have to make them respected as a team, or we don't have a path to success. So they put together a great game plan. They executed it very well. And I mean, Buffalo really did nothing to stop it at all times. So, I mean, this is a very impressive win by Cincinnati. I mean, it's the best playoff win, I think, for the Bengals. It's the most complete game they put together in the playoffs ever. Last year we saw a lot of, it goes down to the last score. They won all of them, and that was clutch and awesome. But, they never were really felt ahead or really were in a good spot last year or even last week against the Ravens. This game, going pretty much after they only got a field goal at the beginning of the second half, the Bills, the Bengals just pretty much took over from there, and it was out of sight. Carter started. Great job for the Bengals. Excited to see this game next week. But the Bills, I don't really know what you do to move forward too much. I mean, Von Miller was your big, offseason signing, and another reason why people were so heavily into the Bills. I think if he's in this game, it's a very different looking game, and he probably will be back by all means. And we'll see what the Bills do because I just don't know what they're going to do on offense because it needs to be something where they find some kind of run game and they need to somehow get to Josh Allen and tell him he needs to do a better job of not forcing the ball downfield all the time.
With you on that, Cease. I really do think they can invest more in their offense. We saw them make a trade for Nyheim Hines. They only used him as a returner, basically. They drafted James Cook, who out of Georgia, who's Dalvin Cook's brother. He's more of a third down back, not like an every down runner. They traded away Zach Moss on that Nyheim Hines deal. That didn't really change the running game. And they sit there with Gabe Davis as the second wide receiver. And it's really cool that Gabe Davis broke the record for most touchdown catches in a game in the playoffs last year with the 4 against the Chiefs, right? So, that's really cool. But, at the end of the day, he's not a great wide receiver, too. And then they tried to fill the gap by signing Cole Beasley as a slot guy. Probably at the end of his career, not really that worth it. So, they need to invest more in the offense. They need to obviously work with Josh Allen, like you said. The defense is still very, very tough. They just have a couple things to clean up and maybe get healthier. As you said, Von Miller has a lot of money tied with him to the Bills. That's why he signed with the Bills rather than going back to the Rams or any other team. So there's some things to do if you're the Bills. There's some again. Josh Allen made the plays that maybe made people think that this is all on him. But there's some things the front office can do, and I think that's a big theme for the teams that are in the conference championship round. There's a lot of front offices that did invest, that did put a lot of work into it. And making sure they had the best chance to win the championship. All right, the last game on Sunday, the 49ers beat the Cowboys 19-12. This game was tied up 6-6. The Cowboys had scored a touchdown and then missed an extra point because that's what Brett Maher does. The 49ers had kicked 2 field goals. Tony Pollard then breaks his leg, and it seems like Dallas's offensive game plan goes out the window. Zeke Elliott doesn't get anything going. They get field goals the rest of the game, which Brett Maher coincidentally makes, even though he misses the extra points. Brock Purdy does a good job of just doing the little things, not trying to do too much, distributing the ball to their playmakers. George Kittle specifically had a couple big catches in this game, and the 49ers are able to win this game. Pretty bad game for Dak Prescott, 2 interceptions in this one. And for the 49ers, their overall talent level helps them win out, even when Brock Purdy, again, just does the little things to get the win. And their offense doesn't do too much because Dan Quinn had a good game plan. So they score 19 points and win a playoff game. That's not something you can usually say.
Right. I mean, it was a well fought game for most of it. Obviously, Tony Pollard going down with that gruesome leg injury that's going to hurt the Cowboys' offense because that's really been a lot of the keys to their success. As Zeke Elliott has just shown he's not able to really carry the load anymore. It's great for the short, yardage plays, those goal line plays, maybe even pass blocking and things like that. But he's not able to be as explosive as he once was, it seems. The defense played decently well. They only give up, 1 touchdown? I think the rest were field goals. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, that's great, and they really contained the Niners to a good point. There were no really huge, just massive plays by the Niners that really changed the momentum. It was just more a lot of, dink and dunk, use the power run game and do what their offense does best. We'll touch on the last play of the game, even though, obviously it doesn't really matter that much. How often do you really this end of the game need a touchdown to win? Crazy hook and ladder plays, not very often, honestly. But but that it was just kind of like it was almost as bad as the butt fumble play, um, where you have this weird alignment, and next thing you know, it just goes horribly wrong from the get go. I mean, Zeke Elliott just got absolutely destroyed within a literally nanosecond, which he should. I mean, he's going up against a defensive tackle, and it's just a combination for failure. But ultimately, if you want to really put the blame on this game on somebody, it's got to be Dak. At the end of the day, it's two interceptions, two that weren't really that close, two that really made him. They looked bad. They were bad decisions, um, and from there, I mean, a guy goes down, somebody's got to make a play, and nobody was able to step up, and Dak wasn't able to step up in that moment. So, the Cowboys. I mean, I don't think you change much. I don't think you fire Mark McCarthy after this year. I think they put together a good enough, demonstration of what he's able to do as a coach. If they lose Dan Quinn, I think that's going to really hurt their defense. But hopefully, they've got the guys and the staff around him that can kind of suffer that and go through that, and they still have a great defense. But I mean, the defensive players, Micah Parsons is looking like one of the best players in the NFL and is going to be one of the best over the next decade, if not the best, especially if Aaron Donald retires here. Um, we've got a lot of offensive weapons still. CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard really came to his own. Hopefully he comes back healthy. Dalton Schultz came out as a decent weapon at tight end as well. Their offensive line is slowly rebuilding, has gotten a lot better, despite all the injuries. So if I'm Jerry, I think this is one of those off seasons where you're not going to get rid of Dak. You're not going to be able to change anything about who Dak Prescott is. I think you got to invest in this team. You just go, this is the window for now. I mean, we don't really have any other choice. They pretty much gave away Amari Cooper this offseason, which was probably not the smartest move. I think you just start getting Dak more weapons, build around him, and try to compete. Because, I mean, with that defense, they can compete. They don't need Dak to be Superman. They don't need Dak to be amazing. All they need to do is have Dak not turn over the football like he's been doing in a lot of these big games over the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely, Cease. I will give Dak his blame for his play on the field for sure. There's no defending. He should have played better. I will give the front office a lot of blame because this is the same old with Jerry Jones teams. It is Jerry has all the power in the world with the Cowboys, and it's just something that keeps on keeping on with him, where he will go down to the field and talk to the kicker before the game after he misses two kicks. I don't care what the owner says, but when you come down and talk to the kicker who you probably haven't talked to that much in your life, and even if you're trying to loosen things up, that's not a good thing. This is an ego thing that has started with the Jimmy Johnson's thing and has persisted ever since. And now his son gets more involved and has kind of like made it more conservative. And in doing that, it creates this volatile thing where they'll either be super aggressive or they'll be super conservative and nothing in the middle, when a lot of times you can be a little bit of both, but not extremes. So they have Amari Cooper was traded to save money for the cap, clearly a move by Stephen Jones. So you sit there, Michael Gallup's your number 2 coming off an injury, and he had more 0-yard games this year than 50-yard games. You just have to sign T.Y. Hilton for a good third receiver because you drafted Jalen Tolbert in the second round and decided not to play him, or maybe he was a bust. There's like a lot of things here that, really screwed things up. Signing Zeke to that long-term deal, not the greatest idea in consideration when he is not the same player anymore. Tony Pollard, bring him back, get CeeDee Lamb back, go get a true wide receiver number 2. The offensive line played well. Tyler Smith was a really good rookie, and that defense is good. And then it is on Dak if you support him that way. It's 100% on Dak if you support him that way, but that's just something the front office hasn't been able to do. I will say, too, Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, has been very erratic during his time as the offensive coordinator of the Cowboys. And it shows itself in Dak's play. It'll be one great game like Dak had against the Bucs. It'll be one bad game like Dak had against the 49ers. And the same thing goes for Kellen Moore. I also think that one of Dak's best assets is his ability to run the football. He hasn't done it as much the last couple of years, and he suffered. When he was at his peak, he was like at least keeping defenses honest with his ability to run. He had a nice run against the 49ers. You just have to do it more consistently. If you want to save him in the regular season and not have him take too much damage, that's fine. But in the playoffs, just try to get him some carries. Try to at least make his legs a threat. And that's something that he may not be the fastest quarterback in the league, but he at least used to do and made him a great quarterback for fantasy, as we know, sees, and even for NFL purposes as well. So, again, Dak is to blame. he had a decent amount of support, but the front office deserves the blame too because they could have gone all in with this team, and they decided, oh, we're going to save money by trading Amari Cooper. You know what helped? I mean, CeeDee Lamb was the only guy who they targeted all game. You know what helped in this game? Amari Cooper. So it's just a total failure, and they'll have to come back next year, like you said, and invest and everything. And to the 49ers, on the flip side, it is a total success. Your quarterback, you're down to your third string quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant, but you've invested in this team. You have Deebo Samuel, you have Brandon Ayuk, you have George Kittle, you went and got Christian McCaffrey, you got Trent Williams a couple years ago. You are starting Mr. Irrelevant, and I'll be honest, he's been okay. He has not been great, but he is using his weapons as much as possible. The defense is obviously there with Bosa as well, and Fred Warner, who best linebacker in the game and arguably has the skills of a safety playing linebacker. That is them being rewarded for their building the team right. And then the flip side, the Cowboys were not built right, in my opinion, and that just changes everything. So props to the 49ers, Eagles, Bengals, Chiefs. I think all those teams have done things that have warranted them getting to the conference championships. And Cecil, let's get to our picks now. We're going to start it off with the NFC championship game. San Francisco 49ers, Philadelphia Eagles. This one's in the link. The Eagles came off that bye, looked pretty good against the Giants. They are favored by 2.5 points.
Yeah, I'm picking 49ers with the upset here as the away team. A lot of this is going to come down to it's going to be the 49ers defense is going to have to play they're going to have to play very well against Jalen Hurts. I think if there's any team that's able to really stop what the Eagles have been doing, which is a lot of just optioning the ball, oh, is it better to pass it? Is it better to run it here as the quarterback? Is it better to give it to the running back? I think with the 49ers, they can suffocate you so quickly and really just dominate the line of scrimmage that sometimes you don't get enough time to make that decision. And if you're wrong, you're definitely going to feel it really quickly. I think, that defense is going to be as hyped as anyone. There's been a lot of flip from the 49ers were the favorite a week ago to win the NFC, and now it's the Eagles because they looked healthy and they look really good against the Giants. But let's get back to the reality of what the Giants are. Everybody kind of bought in the Giants after they beat a Vikings team who most of us said wasn't really that good. And they didn't beat them by that much. They didn't get blown out by a very talented Philadelphia team. They really didn't do anything that crazy with the ball. They just were strong and they played well and executed well against a team that was way less talented. They're not going to have that option against the San Francisco 49ers. Lane Johnson isn't going to be able to as easily bully, guys on the 49ers defensive front, especially while he's playing through that injury, which pretty much is a groin injury like that is hurting every time he takes a snap. That's really going to be a lot harder to maintain and do pain management on in situations against guys like this that are power rushers that are, they do everything well. So I think things with the Eagles that we didn't think about or everyone's just kind of thrown to the wayside because of this one game, and that's what I feel like people are reacting to right now, I think are going to show a little bit more. I think it's going to be very close. Again, the 49ers are not going to put it on Brock Purdy to win this game. I don't think they will. If they give him, I bet they give him maybe 2 or 3 shots. I think the Eagles are going to allow that as well. I think if Brock Purdy can make, honestly, one of those big plays that he's not usually expected to make, if he can just come up with one of them, I think that's the key difference in the game for the 49ers because he's shown really good decision-making. He's not going to force the ball. Kyle Shanahan's really not going to let him either. But ultimately, there's going to be a play where Shanahan's probably going to install and probably just didn't show in this last game. It's going to be, this is your chance. This is your shot. If you see it, take it. And if they can complete that big play, maybe I think that's probably going to be the game.
Well, I'm going Eagles to win and cover. This is, I think, mostly because it is at the link. I think this is a game, if it was in San Francisco, I might pick the 49ers. But the link will be a tough place to play at. Again, mentioned earlier, these are two really well-built teams, but the difference is going to be the quarterback position. Jalen Hurts playing pretty well. Was in the MVP discussion before he went down with that injury. Brock Purdy has shown these little bits of inconsistencies that could hurt them. I like what Brock Purdy has done because he takes what the defense gives him, and sometimes he's not afraid to make those throws that Jimmy Garoppolo was afraid to make. He's really unlocked George Kittle again at the end of the season and in the playoffs, which I think is, I mean, if you have a tight end who can do things like that, that really does open up the offense. We see that with Kansas City. That's just my feeling is that the quarterback position will make a little bit of a difference here. This will probably be the best defense that Brock Purdy has played, if not the Cowboys and the Eagles, over this long stretch. I think it's gonna be a little bit too much. I think he's gonna have to make some throws, and while he's done a really good job and helped prove some of the doubters wrong, he was Mr. Irrelevant for a reason. He wasn't the greatest college quarterback. The guys won't be as wide open as they were in the last several weeks. Just think it's gonna be a little bit too tough for him to get the win. Watch for the Eagles to try to get a lead early and then make him come back, because that would be the best case scenario. If I were the Eagles, I would take the opening kickoff and try to score, which was not easy against 49ers defense. But that's what I would try to do, and make Brock Purdy have to come back and make those throws, make him prove that he can do it, which I'm not sure that he has had to do too many times so far in his NFL career. All right, Cease, AFC Championship game, we have a rematch of last year, the Cincinnati Bengals at the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this line opened up in favor of the Chiefs, but after Adam Schefter reported that it's a high ankle sprain for Patrick Mahomes, even though Andy Reid said he's going to play, the line has shifted, and now it's the Bengals Bengals are favored by 2.5 points.
And I'm going to pick the Bengals to win and cover here. I mean, the Bengals are playing their best football right now. I think, Patrick Mahomes not being able to roll out of the pocket, which has been, honestly, if we want to talk about the thing the Bengals defense it's had the biggest issue with, it's not finishing sacks. And that's because the quarterbacks have been more mobile, than they have been in recent years, it seems. And the Bengals are always just seem to be one step away from making the sack, and they bail out and make some rollout play or throw it away. Patrick Mahomes is not going to have that ability in this game. He is going to have to stand in the pocket. He is still a really good pocket passer. I think anyone who thinks that, he can't roll out, he makes a lot of great, amazing plays. And it's one of his plus attributes that makes him one of the best players to ever play quarterback, is because of his ability to create. He's a creator in that way with the rollout. He's still a good pocket passer, still very good, still has a heck of an arm. He can stand in there and he can launch it down the field. I don't think that should be taken for granted. But, I mean, that's just one dimension of Mahomes that would worry me. I think if Mahomes was fully healthy in this game, I think it's a coin flip. I think it's one of those you almost have to think the Chiefs have got to win one of these. The Bengals have won 3 in a row. At some point, the Chiefs have to find some kind of adjustment to get a win. But now with, a hobble Patrick Mahomes, which is honestly – that mobility was going to be one of the big things. It's one of the big things we worried about with Josh Allen. Was going to be the big thing that I think the Bengals defense would struggle against. Bengals offense is going to do fine against the Kansas City defense. I think, the backup offensive line, whoever, I don't know who's going to play. No one knows right now. They're day to day. But if it's the same starters from last week, I think it's not going to be as good a result. I think it's not really supposed to snow. So I think, Frank Clark is going to have a much kind of more important game that he's going to wreak some havoc. Joe Burrow is going to have to make some things happen, but I think they will get theirs on offense. So for that reason, I'm picking the Bengals. Honestly, I was worried that the Bengals were going to get too into themselves after this big win, and the narrative was going to be, Pat Mahomes is injured, the Bengals are going to win this game. But luckily, the media has basically acted like it's not a big deal at all. Patrick Mahomes is still very much going to win this game. Patrick Mahomes at 80% can beat the Bengals. All these things. So somehow I don't know what denial people are in. I just don't really get it. But at a certain point, I don't know how many times the Bengals have to beat the Chiefs and beat Patrick Mahomes before they go, this is going to be a close game, and that ankle injury definitely hurts them. They don't need to say the Bengals are going to rout them. They don't need to say the Bengals necessarily are going to absolutely win this game. But the reality of them just being like, whatever, he can't move isn't going to deter them against a good Bengals team that has already given Mahomes problems over the last 3 meetings. And they still have a defense that doesn't have the ability to really do much, especially if the line holds up, because that's where all their playmakers are, is close to the front line there and their defensive line, and they have some decent linebackers, and their second is not good. So that's my rant. I'm glad, honestly, just keep giving them bulletin more material. Keep saying that the Bengals are good, but the Chiefs can still win this game. The Bills. It's not as much about how good the Bengals are. It's more about how much of a collapse it is in Buffalo. Just keep it coming. That's fine. I don't want them to ever think they're good because the Bengals are much better when they're the underdogs. And even though Vegas line has finally shifted, it seems like the media still thinks that it's not going to be a big deal with this high ankle sprain.
Yeah, and it seems to elaborate on that too. High ankle sprains usually a couple of weeks to recover from. Like it's not easy, and it's like Tony Romo even suggested like he may not play this week, even though the Chiefs are saying he's going to play. It's not even just a pain threshold thing. Yeah, they'll shoot him up with whatever to get him ready to play. It's a stability thing. Like he won't have the same base that he used to have. He won't be able to run even if he tries. It changes the whole game completely. I said earlier the only team in the AFC I was picking to beat the Bengals this year was the Bills, and I picked them mostly because I picked them in the preseason, and I thought that defense was a little better. But the Chiefs are not as good of a team as the Bills, especially when you add into the fact Patrick Mahomes isn't great, and that's because Patrick Mahomes has the ankle injury. That is because the defense isn't as good. The defense is borderline liability to them. I mean, the offense scores a lot, so it's understandable they give up some points. So I think the Bengals are going to be able to win. I think the Bengals win and cover. The things I'm concerned about, Cease, if I'm a Bengals fan, you said it, the offensive line. The snow's not going to be there to help them to slow down the pass rush. This will be on grass. That helps a little bit better than turf, but it's still something to note that they need to be aware of. Jackson Carman specifically, going against the Bills, they didn't have any speed rushers with Von Miller out. No one else was a speed rusher. He struggles with guys who can move. So if Frank Clark can kind of find it, like he did maybe a couple years ago in the playoffs, and maybe when he was a little bit younger, that could be a huge problem for the Bengals. But we've seen Joe Burrow deal with pressure and be able to maneuver around the pocket, and I'm just not sure that the Chiefs will be able to keep up with that. The other thing I'm concerned about is Eli Apple has gone back to talking some major trash online, and the last time he did that, he gave up 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl and had a defensive pass interference in the last drive that allowed the game-winning touchdown to Cooper Kupp. And you might say, well, that's Cooper Kupp. He's like the best receiver in the league. Yes, he was talking trash about shutting down Tyreek Hill last year before he went and played Cooper Kupp. Just like this, now he's talking trash about Stephon Diggs and going into playing the AFC Championship. And I just, like you said, Cease, I think Bengals have plenty of bulletin board material. Eli Apple just doesn't. He needs to cool it because he was talking trash during the whole game against the Bills too, and doing this on his face when Stephon Diggs went down with an injury. That's going to get them riled up, and you don't want to do that. So. Eli's not shown to be the guy that has the most smarts about when he does those things, but those would be my concerns. What I'm happy about for the Bengals, though, Joe Burrow's ability to handle pressure, whether they manufacture that with 4 or they try to blitz, he will be able to handle it. Lou Anarumo's defense, great defensive game plan in general for most of the year, but also against the Chiefs, he just knows what he's doing. He knows how to slow down Patrick Mahomes. And also, Patrick Mahomes not making those out-of-platform plays. You said it, they don't finish sacks. And if that's the one thing that we can gripe about, they hit the arm of the quarterback sometimes, and even if they hit the arm, the quarterback will still roll out and make plays. So, him being not able to scramble as much is going to be tough. Now, he's still a really good pocket passer, so the Bengals shouldn't go in here taking anything for granted. But you're right. I think the bulletin board material is going to come through. The Bengals will be able to win and cover on the road. Just crazy that no one believes in them still. And I'm glad the Vegas line finally shifted and people realized that a high ankle sprain is bad because at first they didn't realize that and it was flipped and it just made no sense. Other bulletin board motivation seats for the Bengals. The All-Pro teams were released. They didn't make the All-Pro NFL team. They didn't make the All-Pro AFC team. Not one Bengal made it. And I get it, Joe Burrow didn't make it over Patrick Mahomes. That's whatever. That's fine. But there's not one guy on the team. Crazy. All right, well that's our picks for the week. Cecil, any final thoughts?
Now, I'm telling you, Bengals Niners, it's happening. We're gonna visualize it. We're gonna make it happen. Knocking on wood, and I'm gonna visualize.
Hey, either way, I'll be very happy if the Bengals beat either of those teams. Those teams have, the 49ers have tortured the Bengals fans in the past, even if we weren't necessarily alive for those moments. But, last year, too, was a very tough game for the Bengals. And the Eagles, I mean, they got their Super Bowl a couple years ago. Their fans are going to be rowdy. It's going to be fun on Twitter if the Bengals and Eagles play. I'm sure it'll get heated, but I'll be happy to beat either of those teams. Just remember, they got to play us, and Joe Burrow's pretty good. And my turn to remind everyone to like and subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or wherever your podcast's at. We will be back in 2 weeks to recap these games, a week and a half about, to recap these games and then preview the Super Bowl. We don't want to do the Super Bowl preview too early. Don't feel the need to talk about the Pro Bowl. For now, thanks for listening. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
See you guys.